Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Daniel, naturopath and esoteric researcher or some sort of nutrition researcher, um, trying to figure out why we have some of the problems we have and some natural solutions in order to find a way out of this medical enslavement paradigm that a lot of us are in, especially with age. So today I wanted to talk to you about teeth, a very simple podcast on teeth, on how to heal. When you have cavities, root canals, any sort of pain underneath the jawline, intodontal kind of pain, or even gum pain, when you touch and you feel like there's a little pain there, or if you have like hot, cold teeth, cavity oriented, where the enamel's been kind of, you know, um, destroyed or weakened and the dentine is exposed or soft, you can feel the tooth kind of going soft. So, this is all to address that using transdermal magnesium. It's a very simple solution. I've found nothing like it, actually. There's nothing like it in the sense that if you have the right quality stuff, which is has the Zechstein Inside logo on it and is in glass bottles, which is our brand. Um, and no, there's other brands with the logo too, all throughout Europe. And a lot of people are using glass, but in America, it's like the distribution has gone a different direction. So we're kind of more rare in going this direction with the glass and the high purity. And in the U.S., there's just a lot of this USP stuff, and even these companies that pretend to be from the Zechstein with all sorts of Zechstein marketing and logos and stuff, but without the logo, it's not coming from the unique and only source. And that source can be contacted by you, the customer. You can call them yourself and talk to them in Holland. So you won't find that for anyone else because all that stuff is secret, or they'll just send some samples to a lab, and then the lab will tell them this, that, and the other. And the lab will be in Holland, or they'll use, and they import from China. The lab's in Holland, and then they cover their bases. But the truth is that to call the source of the on-site production and be able to talk to the people there, that's unheard of because most people are getting this stuff from Asia. It's way too cheap for them to not do it. I mean, Asia will send you bottles of it from Tibetan exploitation straight to your house for 30 cents on the dollar, and you can, market that in any way you want and you can have a full range of products within the first, um, just within the first order. And so it creates this illusion that this is the way to go, and it's not. So people just doing things to make money, and that's their whole motivation, ends up changing the whole product and how it can work, and even the knowledge and wisdom behind it. It just becomes more of like a marketing thing, and then it also kind of rips you off to a certain level because you'll get some of the magnesium deficiency covered, which is why we take magnesium anyway. Even if we're taking the wrong types of magnesium and they're not assimilating in the body still is taking some of it because we're so deficient. So there is always going to be some sort of positive with magnesium selling and things like that. But the problem is that it's like giving someone half of the experience or a tenth of the experience, because they're not going to get the chelation, they're not going to get the detoxification of the heavy metals and endocrine disruptors to that degree, because the plastics leach into the product, and they're going to have that coming in as they use the transdermal in plastic bottles. And then the fact that it's been refined and it loses a lot of its chelating powers, and so it's not pulling the toxins out as well either. And then it's sterile to a certain degree. It's been refined and solvent extracted to pull out so many different things that molecularly we're not talking about the same thing anymore. So it's like we have to move on from the conversation of milk equals milk, which means any milk equals another milk. That's what milk is. It's milk, and this is like ridiculous. That's like from a raw Jersey cattle, small production Celtic race cow with heavy cream top and nothing being pulled off or siphoned off or skimmed or even 2%, which doesn't make any sense. Milk is technically 6 or 7% when it's natural. And so, when things are done right, it's a whole different animal than some sort of pasteurized UHT milk on a shelf that lasts for 2 or 3 months that's been industrially processed from Holstein cattle that have been breeded to eat high levels of grains. And I mean, you're in a whole nother world. So don't compare, like I don't think it's a mathematical formula, but A is not A in the sense that everything created is different from each other thing. And so A is not perfectly A, and milk is not milk to a certain degree, raw milk. And so it's the same with magnesium. So magnesium is not magnesium. It's not just they're all the same. It's magnesium, and then you got to answer a bunch of questions. You got to open that word up and compare if you want the right stuff. It is the number one deficiency, so it's very important. So those little distinctions are not a part of the tooth podcast, because if you don't understand these things, then you won't understand why it's important. You'll just buy whatever, and you'll go down the wrong path. So for $3 a week, just go down the right one, and that's $3 a week, and that's only like a couple months out of the year for some people. So it's really $3 a week for 2 or 3 months. It's not even all year long at $3 a week. So let's say about $50 a year is what it would cost. So you just take this transdermal magnesium teaspoon. If you have a ceramic teaspoon or maybe even a wooden teaspoon or something, it might be better, or you can go kind of straight into the cap. Some people do that, or you can also just take it with a metal teaspoon, but it's preferable. Like I have silver teaspoons, but anyway, it's preferable to take it with, because the metal and the metal, they kind of don't, there's kind of a reaction there. So you want to take it with something, like a ceramic spoon would be great. And you put a little in the mouth, a teaspoon or two, you let it sit for 20 minutes, you spit it all out after 20 minutes, and you'll notice, if you have tooth pain on the bottom of your mouth, that's the easiest. You just sit there. If it's on the other side of your mouth, meaning the top end of the teeth, the upper teeth, then you might have to hang your head over the bed to get it to soak and bathe in that area. So the fact that the product is not diluted, which is also another big problem in most of the brands, because they don't tell you the dilution. They just tell you that you have this thing in your hand called magnesium whatever, and they don't talk to you about these realities. So the actual natural dilution of this product, the natural saturation that happens when it's mined from this Zechstein sea, these enormous salt pillows, which are like a translucent stone called bischofite, which is underneath Holland. Whenever the water comes in contact with this, there's no chemicals in the water, there's no heat, there's nothing used. It's spring water, because there's nothing that needs to be used, because it's a salt, and so it dissolves on its own. And so the dissolving happens, and it saturates at around 31%. So it's about 31%. Now that doesn't mean that, that the saturation isn't the same for any sort of industrial version of the product, of course. There can be industrial versions that are there at 31% too. So it doesn't mean, I found the key way to figure out what's the good stuff. No, the 31% happens in general with magnesium. And so there's a natural saturation around 31%, and so that means it's 30% heavier than, water. So 30% heavier than water. It can, with that molecular weight, it can push down into the jawline and go beneath it, or on the skin, it pushes it down. So there's a weight there, and that's important. The weight is part of how it gets into the body. And that's why, just on a separate topic, that, if you're taking baths in the wrong type of non-filtered, radon, a bath full of radon, there's a lot of radon found in the water, there's atrazine, there's all these forever chemicals, there's all these types of fluorine and fluoridated chemicals that are in there, that have been slipped in behind the fluoride to pretend that they're also part of that little family, but they're actually have nothing to do with the initial fluoridification process, and everything to do with contaminating the water supply. So this type of water is not recommended. So we recommend doing these things directly on the skin when you use our products, instead of taking like a bath with it or whatever, which a lot of people do. I'm not sure if America will completely get over its bath obsession, even in this horrible water conditions that we have. It would be smart. I do see some of it happening with cold showers and this European kind of way of just taking short kind of showers that are almost like without. I mean, I lived in Europe for 15 years. You take these short showers. Sometimes you're even sitting and you just hold the thing. They don't even have like the thing pinned up in the shower, the nozzle head in a lot of places. And not just because they're ghetto. It's just that they don't have that same association with comfort with the shower. And so it's a different type of, I guess they're just a little more rustic, and that's not always a bad quality. Like I thought it was a bad quality just because they were missing out on the comfort that they needed. But in truth, it's a good quality to be a little bit rustic and a little bit offstandish with over immersion and over bathing and even bathing, in the bath water like that. So what I'm getting to is the molecular weight of the water itself when you're in a bath is pushing down on the skin, and it's allowing certain things to come penetrate into the skin as well, through that weight. And so showering is going to be a better way because the body's going to keep out some of the toxins better in that environment, in a shower more than a bath. With the exception of the fact that you don't want to do this too long anyway. You don't want to take long showers and long. You want to get to where you just quick in and quick out, and if possible, finish with cold or take a cold shower, depending on the weather and all these other things, your frame, stuff like that. But so this molecular weight helps it to absorb beneath the jawline. That's what's important, is it gets beneath the jawline, and once it gets beneath the jawline, it can go underneath and kill some of the bacteria which are underneath our root canals. I'm not saying all root canals are bad, but most of them are, and it's a practice that should not be really undertaken. Now it's pretty much the modern standard for a lot of situations. I don't know what the replacement would be for such a situation. I think that sometimes losing a tooth and having it cavitated, meaning having the surgery, a special type of surgery where they scrape and they get out all the nodes and any kind of place that bacteria could like hang on to, which they don't do in a typical, when they pull your tooth, they typically don't cavitate it, because they're taught in dental school to avoid this nerve, and they stay away from some of these things. But then these parts end up becoming pockets. There's possibilities there, and even if they're not infected in a way that's visible on the surface, they can have a deeper infection under the jawline, which goes invisible, undetected for years, creating like an incubation for different types of bacteria. Now, this is well known. This is under the focal infection theory. You can also look it up under L-form bacteria. There's a bunch of research done on this type of focal infection, especially by Weston Price and others. But so this kind of reality in the teeth creates a lot of problems, and 90% of Americans have had their teeth drilled on, worked on, or whatever. So we're no longer at the stage of like pure teeth, and now we've cut and drilled, and as soon as you go in there with a drill or even pull a wisdom tooth, like there's a potential for these pockets and for these areas to have bacteria in these low oxygen zones, which have just a little bit of opening. And these bacteria are down there. They're down there when these pockets are created, and so they just multiply infinitely. It never ends, as long as they found this new home, which is allowing that to happen. So the body has an area that's been distorted, and it's allowing a certain kind of pattern or folding of the tissue, which allows for some areas where bacteria can just maintain. And it goes undetected. And then on top of that, you have politics, which plays into it. So there's a lot of controversy about allowing some of this wisdom to come to the light of day, because they don't want to connect a lot of this. This could be a masterpiece in a lot of the health problems in America, starting from the teeth and working itself down into the body. So there can be a need to stop this type of information, because just like with every other kind of real cure or anything that's actually going to really help you to understand yourself, there can be some blocked information. I mean, who wants to? And it doesn't even have to be conspiracy. I mean, when you start saying that root canals are unhealthy, you got like 90% of dentists against you. So there's lobbies, there's people, there's all sorts of energy behind that, and so they have an interest to keep what they're doing going. Not only for some of the bad components and lead and amalgams and mercury and a lot of things that are used in dentistry that's not non-organic dentistry, non-biological dentistry, but in general dentistry. So it's not only for that, it's not only to push that stuff onto us, but there's also a desire to just, even the practice itself of root canals, to not question that. So so sometimes that's the only way out. Is you could say, well, then what could we do to replace the root canal? Well, sometimes you just lose that tooth, and that's part of the sad truth of the loss that comes through the sugar generation and a lot of our lack of understanding. And so we have to hit that wall ourselves. And that tooth, some people say, okay, well, we can put, implants. We can get these perfectly zirconium, like perfect, where there's no metal amalgamation in the mouth, and everything has like a perfect neutrality. And so you could say, well, this is the right way to do it. But even when you drill back into those teeth and drill back into that jawline to put that in there, I mean, there is metal involved because you have to, put that down into the bone. It's possible that they could make a hole big enough where you could actually just screw a piece of porcelain into the bone. Okay, I'll give them that. But there can be, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea. In some situations, it might be. If you've only got a few teeth left, there might be a need. There might be a need to eat properly. There might much greater than the need to, it's about balancing between a worse need, like two evils sometimes. But in general, that opening up of that jawline is going to bring about even more problems down the road as far as bacteria is concerned. So sometimes the pulling and the scraping and the cavitation of the tooth, and then that being seen as a loss for the individual, that's gone now. And that staying that way, I mean, okay, there's bridges and there's things you can do in certain situations, but some of those situations harm the teeth. So, I mean, you have to harm the teeth to do them. You have to cut them or shape them. So once again, once the drilling is there, we're back in the same game. So you maybe could find prosthesis, something you could wear, and you just have to accept that. If you want that tooth covered, the hole covered, or whatever it is, you just have to accept that. Now, it's hard to understand. It's hard to go into this world unprepared, because most dentists will tell you, oh, if you have a hole there, the top is going to come down, and then it's going to do this, and this is going to happen. And some of these things are true, and some of them are not. Some of them can be true. Some of them can happen way, way later in life. Some of them, like the dentists don't know everything, even if they're working in that field. And sometimes especially because they're only in that field and that they're indoctrinated to what they see. They'll try to work on your mouth for a million different little things. And sometimes they don't understand it's possible that God has a system in here where the teeth there's been many reports of people who've not had teeth worked on for 20 or 30 years after they've reestablished the proper oral hygiene and oral bacteria and lack of acidity, and they've done all the work with different foods that they're using, and animal foods especially, and healing. There's cod liver oil and all these other deficiencies, K2, and so once some of these things have been put into place and healed, a lot of people find that their teeth will stabilize, sometimes for 20 to 30 years. They may ride it out until they die sometimes. And so some of these rules about all the things you have to do and may not apply. They may not. And they may. But it's like just don't give too much credence to all of it. Just try to feel out what you think is true and what you need based on the fact that it's not a full authority. There's some authority there. But you have to kind of have an open-ended, or you could say an open mind when you go into that. It's the same with everything else they try to propose. You're going to be on this thyroid medication for life. You're going to no, for life. You're going to, this is going to happen to you because of this, and you've got 3 days to live, and you have 2 years or whatever it is. So there's a million things like that. So you can't be giving your authority away. You have to be strong, and just as strong. And you could be just as strong as the dentist who's completely prepared. You could be just as strong as him in your mind. So it's about just holding on to your intuition and listening to some of those things. So sometimes you have to take the loss. And so I did. I had to lose 3 or 4 of my molars because of this. 3. And so I have one side of my mouth I can chew on, and the other side, so I've had to go through this acceptance, so to speak. Now, is there a chance that at some point I'll need to do something else? Maybe. I don't know. And is it just negligence on my part? I don't think so, because really fixing the environment and the acidity is the key. And so minerals help with that. Magnesium helps with that. But this magnesium kind of bathe that you can put in your mouth, where for 20 minutes you just sit there with it. It'll collect a lot of water. You'll spit it all out, and it'll be, you don't want to swallow any of it. But it'll push away the pain. So you have these pains that are in there, and the pains will go away for months at a time. They won't come back for a month or two. I mean, depends on what you're eating. I mean, if you're drinking your sodas and all that, then yeah, it's over, But if you went through the trouble to heal some of the teeth and have followed like Weston Price principles, guidelines, healthy fats, and I mean, really, today saying healthy fats and following these guidelines doesn't mean anything anymore, because it does a little bit, because it's good to know what traditional foods are and how they're supposed to be when they are done right. But the problem is that if you pick any traditional meal today and you replace it with modern ingredients that could replace the whole meal, like, you've got a lot of bad things happening in that plate now. It's sad to say, but there's a lot of bad things happening in that plate, even in the best case scenario, even in the most organic and whatever. I mean, you're getting the best you can, but it's not good enough, right? Like, I just went to Austin, and in Austin, unlike California, you can tell that the people are smart enough there. I'm not saying people aren't smart in California. I'm just saying this is reflected on the menus that I was seeing. But I could tell that a lot of the restaurants that we went to, some of them had, basic stuff, and they weren't paying attention, and maybe even most of them. But the ones that we ended up picking, unlike some of the ones I've picked here, they seem to have understood how to avoid some of the dangers. Like, instead of having some sort of chicken, which is all fed soy in America, pretty much 90%, 99% of them fed a lot of soy, so you can't get away from that. They would have like quail on the menu, or they would have, it was kind of like an artisan quail. Then they would also have Amish chicken, which they order from the Amish farms, which are fed differently. And you can even find soy-free and all that there, with those keywords. But technically, if you really think about it, if you have a big enough farm, not ultra, size, but like a normal farm, the answer when you ask someone what they feed their chickens could be nothing. Because when things are done right, the chickens follow a cycle of the sheep and the cows, and that gives them the excrement dries up, the cow turds dry up, the worms come there, they eat the worm. There's like this whole process, and so you're not even feeding them anything. So sometimes they'll supplement a little bit, and they'll do this, that, and the other, to make sure their chickens are well. But there's a place in France, I think they feed the chickens raw milk and wheat berries, and that's it. Some places use apple cider vinegar and different things to help with their digestion, but the most important is that they're able to get food from their environment and the grass. So that's hard to pull off if you don't know what you're doing, because if it's one of these places where that's all they do is it's a chicken farm. So that doesn't make any sense. Once again, it has to be a full-on farm for it to work. So I don't know how I got off track there, but I, I kind of feel like there was some important ideas to understand about not just following a general basis of guidelines. You have to be much sharper today in order to stay out of some of the dangers that are here. So, soy-free, corn-free, this can be keyword. Also, ordering foods online, a lot of imports, starting to become friendly with Russian and Scandinavian and Polish or Eastern Bloc, and well, in LA, Armenian, you can add to that, and other types of food sources that, Persian, Middle Eastern. So trying to find food sources that can kind of undo what's been done here, which is the high soy fed animals. A lot of times, even grass fed, they can be fed soy oil because it's not a grain. And, they have all these tricks and ways that they can switch around the legislation. So getting truly imported stuff is going to help. And learning a little bit more about other cultures. Going to like the Russian store and buying bacon, this is like a lifesaver. And it's from Lithuania or Poland or whatever. And little things like that you're going to have to learn in American system, because you're not going to be able to survive if you just go into the standard thing until we start reversing some of this. So we'll get there eventually. But so I just wanted to share that small podcast. I mean, I guess it turned into a longer one, but on teeth, because this little simple trick can help not only remineralize the teeth, bring calcium fixation back to the teeth through magnesium. Magnesium is think of it as like a little bit masculine and feminine. Calcium is like the masculine molecule, and magnesium a little bit like the feminine in this kind of tooth equation, because the teeth are hard because of the calcium, but they're flexible because of the magnesium. So they're actually harder because of the magnesium, meaning they can resist more because of that flexibility. And so they work together, and not only does it help remineralize the teeth, reduce acidity through all this mineral buffering system, which is how acidity is reduced in the body, but also through its antibacterial features and being this form of salt or whatever. And then also its weight. And so there's a few things that it has in it, like in its arsenal, to bring about a really powerful. It's much more powerful than the oil pulling that you hear about in India and stuff like that. This is a much more long-term positive effect, healing effect, than just a delay, which is what that does. That kind of delays, needing to go to the dentist or needing to do this, that, or the other, because it kind of gives you some time and can push off some of the bacteria to a certain degree. But the magnesium version also does a delay thing too, in certain cases, I guess, if you have some serious problems. But it also will actually heal and be beneficial over time. Now, there's one thing to be careful of, and that is that the magnesium is very strong. So it's strong when it's pure. It's great when it's pure for certain applications. For the teeth, it's amazing pure because they're like rocks. But for the gums, it's not as great pure, right? So the gums are much more fragile. So if you're using this for bleeding gums or any of these other type of gum specific pain or diseases, that may not work the same, or you have to find the right frequency, meaning that if you dilute it, you can dilute it. So if you dilute it, you can dilute it to where it's like 20% of the product is the magnesium and 80% is water. And this can be used more on a daily basis or more often, and this can help with the gums. But if you're using it for the teeth, for this deep level detoxification and pain and pushing that out and killing of the bacteria, etc., then I wouldn't recommend doing this all the time. If you were to do this every other day, this would be horrible for your gums. Your gums can handle, if you do it even once, sometimes your gums might even bleed in doing it because it's intense. But in general, it's going to help heal the teeth, you see, and what's underneath the teeth. And that's, so you're learning how to, it's just like with like CBD or any of these other things that we're finally learning about, is we're learning how to temper the sword of these plants and these components to where we can use them in the right way. So we have to learn about that. So this can be sharpened or softened, this magnesium product, in order to affect different areas in different ways. Some people apply it to the head and the scalp, and then this gets converted into threonate and other types of molecules through acidification processes, and then it enters into the body. So it may not enter in as quickly as some of these molecules that they've created for it, but because it's local and because it's more ubiquitous in its application, you end up getting something which is not controlled by some sort of laboratory, which can do the same effect, if not better, over time. So go with the full spectrum and let the isolated molecule here and there, let that philosophy die out. I mean, I've seen people get healed way faster on K2 with using foie gras, imported foie gras from France, than I've seen from any supplement. Like, it's almost instantaneous. So food can be medicine, but you have to understand it and you use it in a repetitive way and learn how to apply it in that sense. So I think the American Indians understood a lot of that. And they knew what to use, and they had their medicine, and their medicine was a lot of animal stuff. So they had figured out the right way to do it. Plants can help in certain things, and they're one half of the equation, I guess, but the animals are going to be even more important if you are sick. So the more you're sick, the more the animals will need. You will need them, because the animals are going to convert the vegetal into a form that's more active for you, whether that be selenium on down to retinol to vitamin A, D, all that stuff. So the active forms, you're taking basically the energy that the animal used to convert that, and you're using that energy gradient or that energy surplus. That is what translates into health in your body, is that your body's like, oh, I don't have to do anything. Great. So I can actually heal here. That's why we love broth so much. Good broth, not made with this radon-filled atrazine forever chemical water that we have, but made with spring water, which you have to buy and pour into that to make your own broth. Or maybe some farms, Amish, they may have a different water system if you're ordering broth from them. But so, that's why broth is so readily absorbed by the body and liked so much by us, because it's the body basically saying, oh, free energy. I don't have to convert all this. Somebody went through all the trouble to convert this. So that's where health comes from. It's from that free energy that's freed up, that we can get something quicker and faster and give our body a little head start. So anyway, hopefully that can help somebody as far as the teeth go. This is a miracle product in that sense. It can also be used for herpes and labial, fever blisters, things like that too. It's pretty radical there. I've never seen anything work like that. You can stop it from manifesting even. There's a lot of things you can do with it. So just start playing around with it and get the right stuff at theheartoftradition.com. Thanks.